Kia ora, talofa, namaste, haere mai. Welcome to this episode of the Nishcast. And the point of this podcast and this episode is just to have a big old kōrero about Aotearoa sporting matters specifically related to the niche case and what we cover, what perks our intrigue and just what fucking tickles our toes, of which we have no shortage. Steven Adams and Sean Marks are still doing cool things in the NBA. We've got NRL trials teams. White Ferns are playing against India right now. Coming off that Israel Adesanya UFC 271 fight, we've got domestic cricket. I just wrote about Glenn Phillips, so there's plenty of Aotearoa cricket stuff happening. We've got the Wellington Phoenix are trucking along quite nicely, blokes and wahine, and we've got football, Ferns, footy coming up this weekend as well. We are recording this prior to the Black Caps versus South Africa first test getting underway. Obviously, we've got to fucking hustle through the podcast so we can watch a bit of test cricket because there's nothing better, which also means we probably won't talk too much about the Black Caps versus South Africa because that's happening and that would have started. So all of this is kind of excluding the Black Caps versus South Africa. But of course, there might be some Black Caps chat in that domestic cricket context as well. Who knows? Earlier in the week, we recorded the variety show as well as the Patreon podcast. So big it up to the Patreon whānau. We did get a new Patreon. Shout out to Graham Jewell for joining the Patreon whānau. Every week, there are new Patreon podcasts there for the Patreon whānau. Try to do them on a Monday morning, if not a Monday morning, a Tuesday morning. And we just go deep into Aotearoa sporting matters. So it's always there to recap the weekend sporting action before we do the variety show. So basically, Patreon podcast is super long form, usually an hour and 15, hour and a half. Then we go variety show where we like to chop it up, come at you with some figures and facts and ideas and just present it in a funkier fashion. Then we come back later in the week for the niche cast, which is what you're listening to right now. So that's the extra goodies you get in the Patreon whānau, patreon.com/EL niche case. You support us and that means a lot and we love it. And then we also do the extra podcast for the Patreon whānau each and every week. Every Monday and Friday, we also deliver an email banger via Substack, thenichecase.substack.com. Whack in your email address and you get the niche case content, podcasts, links to all our written pieces at theniche-case.com, as well as extra yarns. That's all we do here at the Niche Case, just fucking extra yarns coming out the hooter. We've got extra yarns in the Patreon podcast. We've got extra yarns every Monday and Friday evening in the email banger, and just kind of processing this at the moment. Tomorrow for my email, I might do a deeper dive into these NRL trials squads and break down the Kiwi-NRL presence in a lot of these trials squads. And I'm sure the wildcard will have something funky lined up. Any ideas there, wildcard?
We'll see how it goes. No ideas yet. That's what today is for, is to figure that out.
There we go. We just flow with the vibe. We flow with the intuition and we see what pops up. But there's always extra yarns. No shortage of extra yarns at the Niche Case. Sign up to the email banger, thenichecase.substack.com every Monday and Friday. And of course, we're always writing about Aotearoa sport at theniche-case.com. I've done a big yarn about Glenn Phillips. There is a big old Black Caps versus South Africa test preview there as well. The wildcard's got the Wellington Phoenix wahine breakdown. He's got the Wellington Phoenix blokes breakdown. Steven Adams update. Like, serious sporting yarns to be had, celebrating Aotearoa sports at the niche-case.com. This is where I usually throw it over to the wildcard for a dose of mindfulness, but I am hijacking today's mindfulness wildcard because I want to present a fairly common dose of mindfulness that has popped up into my life recently that kind of flipped it on its head. And I did a quick Google about where this comes from. And as soon as I saw some like Bible chapters and stuff like that, I was like, fucking close that and just let's riff on it, because the less Bible chatter and the less Jesus shit, whatever, the better. Today's mindfulness wildcard is let there be light. And this hit home because what's the first word in that sentence, wildcard?
Let.
What's the third
Let
word?
as in allow. Let there be.
And what's the last word?
Light.
So we got some key words
I
there.
heard the quote, yeah.
Yeah, well, just roll with me here. Flow with me. We got some key words there. You're not doing a good job at, absorbing my mindfulness. The shoe's on the other foot here. You just got to roll with me here. I'm presenting it.
Well, I wasn't sure where you were going when you said the Bible verses all came up, and then you went with like one of the most famous ones from, I believe, the book of Genesis, I think. So,
first word, let. It's all about allowing. So usually when we think about let there be lights, we want to do things to bring in the lights. We want to take action. We want to get that right wing flapping that gets us going in circles, our masculine energy. We want to do things to bring light into our lives, whether this is going out and taking an action, or if it's something we're like, tomorrow I just need to wake up on time, and tomorrow I really need to do my meditation and exercise, and I really need to do these things I need to achieve my goals to bring in the light into my life. No, you just let there be light. You let the light present itself into your life. And that's the same thing with be. You don't have to do, you just be. And you let the light be present in your life. And of course, the key word there to finish with is light. It's all about love and light. Through your awareness of the darkness, through the awareness of the dark arts and everything that is dark within you, you're aware of the light as well. And what is that light doing? It's just being. What have you done? You just let there be light. You didn't have to do anything. You just created the space through the emptiness, as we've talked about, and then you just let there be light. So it's some key themes there. It's approaching that some of more of that feminine energy. Just let it be. You don't have to do anything. You just let there be light. Of course, you might do that through the emptiness, as we've discussed, and of course, light, love and light. It's all there, and it's all present in our, we've got the darkness and the light, the yin and the yang. So instead of trying to fight off the darkness or trying to hustle in the light, all you have to do is let there be light.
Yeah, love that breakdown. And especially when you put it in that context, like allowing the light to be just being yourself, which allows the light to be, it's saying that like the light is already there. Like it's one of those things about you don't have to you don't have to do the masculine energy, get out on the front foot and like make things happen, forge the light, construct the light. No, the light's already there. So anything you do in order to mess with this like existing balance is actually kind of taking you further away from the light, because the light is there and all you have to do is allow it to, I guess, shine. Keep like light is a nice metaphorical term as well, as you mentioned, like light, love, and peace, and all these things fit nicely together. Like you can interchange a lot of these words, but what they all have in common is like that natural balance, like that natural wisdom, and not fighting against it or trying to manufacture it, just like realizing that it was already there and it was already exactly what it needed to be. Therefore, you were already what you needed to be, and therefore you don't need to like swim against the tide and try fix things, because there's nothing that needs fixing.
Kia kaha. Māori ora, raise your mana. That felt like the conclusion to the podcast. I was just about to drop like a cheer, stay beautiful and whatnot, but
see you next week.
That is the start of the podcast. And I got a couple of quick ideas here, Wildcard, just to get our juices flowing. And these are like insights into my sporting mind, but there's situations I'm keeping an eye on. First one, I've got the Israel Adesanya contract stuff with the UFC. So there's been a key idea that we've discussed in all our podcasts over the last week or so. And I just want to express a change, a shift in the vibe around the Israel Adesanya contract stuff prior to his UFC 271 fight and him getting a new contract with the UFC. I was like, okay, Israel Adesanya is a leader. He's someone who is incredibly smart and a smart operator. And he has seen Francis Ngannou, let alone any other big name UFC fight, come to blows with the UFC regarding their financial situation, regarding contract situations and fighter pay. So I was like, okay, this is interesting and fascinating for me because I know the caliber of like a human that Israel Adesanya is. And now he's coming into a situation where he's a big force, the UFC is a big force. Is this going to be like a niggly situation between the two parties? Now, like almost a week after the fight, it's a very different vibe where it's like all this leadership and morals and ethics that Adesanya has and City Kickboxing has presents a different vibe with the UFC contract. Because now I'm like, okay, there was some sort of collaboration there. There was some sort of cohesion between the two parties, Adesanya and the UFC, Adesanya's management as well. And the way Adesanya presented it, he is kind of setting a tone for the future. So he's setting a tone for things to maybe be better. So before the fight, I was like, okay, Adesanya, the leader, is this going to be a niggly situation? Now it's like Adesanya, the leader, is he kind of ushering in this new way of operations for the UFC and fighters? Because if there is any UFC fighter who really knows and understands the plight of the lesser paid UFC fighters, like the guys on their first 3, 4, 5 fights in the UFC, it's Adesanya because all his mates are in that position. And if there's anyone who can take action to lead the way in this regard, where like in this context, masculine energy is quite helpful. Like you got to apply balance. You got to apply the feminine energy and the masculine energy. And Adesanya is a leader, and he is applying his masculine energy to ensuring that he leads in the correct way for other UFC fighters. And I just found that interesting. It's a change from possible niggle to a more kind of just greater leadership, greater mana, I think. And that's an interesting switch that I've just made in my mind over the last 3 days or so. If you got anything to bounce back on that, you can.
No, not really. It's outlined nicely, and it's an interesting one where he's like, because I just to re-emphasize what you already said about the point, like he does cover all the bases here. Like he's in a pretty unique position. He's not just a solo act. He's actually part of like a team with the City Kickboxing crew, which is not the case with a lot of other fighters. Like they'll have their guys around them, they're, trainers and coaches and stuff, but like it's not the same where you're all part of like this group of fighters that have come up together and taken on the world together, and from another, like from a small country as well, from halfway around the globe. Like that's a factor too. He's got this perspective, plus he's also an absolutely super megastar who has a reputation for being unfiltered when he talks. Like he's not gonna, when what he says is going to be his truth. He's not someone to mess around with those kind of things. So he really is in a unique position for that, to be like that kind of ambassador, I guess.
He's a unique human, as we all
He
are.
certainly is.
I'd also like to update some White Ferns Mahi here wildcard, because they have won the first 2 ODIs against India. This is a 5-game ODI series ahead of the World Cup. And I mean, big it up to Amelia Kerr, who might be a better batter than she is a bowler. She hit a century. Susie Bates has hit a century. And the White Ferns, they've won 2 games. The thing here, wildcard, is I've seen this before. Throughout the White Ferns kind of decline since 2018 to 2019, where, what did I say? Before that Indian series, they had won 3 and lost 20 games in the past few years. So a 3-20 record in ODI cricket since the start of 2019. Throughout that period, the White Ferns have been very good in games that don't matter. Right? Like when it comes time to win games, important games, as far as like a series goes, the White Ferns do not win. This has been the case when they've played like England A last summer. They were really good in these warm-up games against, no, not England A, like just a touring England squad, but in warm-up games. And players earned White Ferns selection in games that meant nothing, in games where more than 11 players batted, in games where the whole intensity was not ODI standard. But the White Ferns performed well. Players performed well. And apparently that meant something. The other thing here is that you look around the series that the White Ferns have played, and they have been very good at winning the third game after losing the first two games. So there's just this constant record throughout the last, like, throughout there, what are they now? 5-20. So 5-20 in their last 25 games. Throughout this period, the White Ferns have been very good at winning games that do not matter. And I'm seeing a lot of White Ferns hype around here, Wildcard. I'm seeing a lot of buzz. Like, your players have found form. That's cool. Like, however you want to slice your White Ferns buzz and hype and excitement, I have been deep in the White Ferns mangroves for a couple years, and the one thing that has been constant throughout that period is that the White Ferns are very good in games that don't matter. And I think that's going to be the vibe throughout this 5-game ODI series. Won't be surprised at all if the White Ferns win all 5 games. Domination. Happy days. And I'll be there after that series, ahead of the World Cup, doing my preview, laying out the case that none of those games mattered, as well as like intrigue as to, wait, could they actually mean something? Like, could they present, does that mean that players have found form, that everything's changed? So it's a bit confusing in my head, right? But I just want to say that the White Ferns are very good at winning games that don't matter, and this sets up even more curiosity about the World Cup, because it would either prove or disprove that idea. And if they are able to perform well at the World Cup, it will show growth in the sense that they have been able to step up when it matters most, when in like all of the historical context suggests that's not going to be the case.
Yeah, what I think what stood out for me over those 2 games is the fact that, like, you know, because there've been a decent amount of runs scored in this series so far. Like 270 odd is a really good, like, ODI women's total. Like, the White Ferns are putting well, first one they batted first, and the second one they chased it down. So, and in both times in those innings, they were anchored around one of their star players scoring 100. And it has been another regular pattern of the White Ferns in recent years is that when they do win, it's generally because one of their, you know, top 4 like superstar players has done something amazing. Like that's generally how they've won games for, you know, longer than this decline period, like going back further than that, the last 5-6 years, since they've had this kind of crew in tags. If Susie Bates, Amy Satterthwaite, Amelia Kerr, Sophie Devine, whoever does something special, they're a good chance to win. When those players don't do something special, they've struggled to have players outside that crew step up to cover for them. And it's like, you know, someone from outside that crew scoring a match-winning 100 or something like that doesn't tend to happen. I guess it's worth mentioning again that, like, the so-called decline period did coincide with a lot of time where they just didn't have all of those 4 players available at once, and maybe even chucking like Leah Tahuhu, who's missed some games as well in that category. She's probably about the closest to joining that group from outside that 4. I don't know, but like Susie Bates had an injury, and basically it seems like I don't think she bowls anymore, eh? But that's all good because they've got plenty of bowling options in that team. And she's scoring runs again, good, like fantastic in Super Smash, and got 100 in the first ODI against India. So that's good. That's what they want to see. Amy Satterthwaite, obviously, like there's maternity leave. Sophie Devine and Amelia Kerr have both had time off the game for mental health reasons in the last sort of 12 to 18 months. Like they haven't really had I'll just say I don't think it's a coincidence that when bad results really caught up with them, and I don't think it was something that like the pattern was already there. They were relying on these players overly, and then when you see an extended spell where they just can't get them all out, like they can't get all their options, top match-winning options in the same team, and they suddenly stop winning matches. I don't think that's a complete coincidence. But as I say, like the signs were there for a type of decline before that as well. It's not just that. But right now they have pretty much a full strength team available to them. It's an asterisk over selections here, but like they have their superstar players, or there are a few of them coming into some very good form as well. And that is a positive sign for optimism going into the World Cup, is saying that, like, well, yes, they've been absolutely terrible in ODIs in recent years, but they haven't quite had the resources they have at the moment. And it is a home World Cup, and they will get some confidence at least from playing against India. I still don't think they're gonna win a World Cup. I don't think they'll win a World Cup semi-final, but like just to balance out the ledger here, it's worth saying some of these things as well. Because as you say, it is confusing, isn't it? It's like we are honestly, what is going, like you can never predict sport anyway, can you? So it's just like it's going to have to take a how do I say this? We don't know what's going to happen until it happens.
It's going to take like a literal fairy tale for them to win the World Cup, and like we're all here for a fairy tale. Like that's a beautiful thing. Two things to keep an eye on with the White Ferns throughout the rest of this ODI series. Sophie Devine, in T20 cricket, she is the best slugger in the world. She opens the batting. In ODI cricket, she bats number 5 or 6 for the White Ferns, and she is not as good, just straight up. In this series, she's got 46 runs across 2 innings, so that's cool. She's got a strike rate of 102, so that kind of signifies what she does in the middle order. If we go to her last 3 years, 2020. Well, so like for a bunch of years prior to this period, she averaged over 30 in like 7 consecutive years. 2020, 25 average. 2021, 18 average. And right now in 2022, average of 23. So how Sophie Devine performs in the middle order is going to be crucial to the White Ferns' success with the bat. Amelia Kerr, similar vibe here. In this series, she has 2 wickets, average of 48, RPO of 5.38, which makes her the most expensive bowler of the bowlers who have played 2 games in this series, both games. If we go to her career, Amelia Kerr burst onto the scene. In her first 3 years of leg spin bowling, she averaged 22 or below. Then 2019, she averaged 29. 2020, she averaged 33.8. 2021, she averaged 40.8. 2022, 2 games in, and she is averaging 48.5. So both Sophie Devine and Amelia Kerr are trending in the wrong direction as key figures ahead of a World Cup. And that is very interesting for the White Ferns, because Amelia Kerr, we think best spinner in the world. Like that's just the perception of Amelia Kerr, beast of a cricketer, fantastic cricketer. And I just think she's a better batter right now than she is a bowler. But she is playing as the frontline spinner for the White Ferns, which is interesting. Sophie Devine, again, perception, amazing batter, fantastical rounder, captain, skipper fantastic, best hitter in the world. Doesn't quite do that in the middle order in ODI cricket. So those are just some key things to keep an eye on with the White Ferns throughout this Indian series, because like Amelia Kerr might find form. That's going to be important. Sophie Devine might just shine as like a middle order slugger, and that's great. Or they might switch it up and she might open alongside Bates, which I think is the best batting combination for the White Ferns. Devine just goes nutty up top. Bates holds it down and you just attack teams that way. Like right now, it feels a bit passive. Fucking win a home World Cup, Sophie Devine just goes nuts up top. Like that is, no bowling attack's going to be able to deal with that.
Well, that was the Brendan McCullum strategy in the 2015 World Cup, is you get him up the top of the order as the captain, no less, as well, a captain, a big hitter, and just like smash a 20 ball 50 to get the innings up and going, and you were ahead of the run rate from the start and everyone else can just carry you. She did open, I think, in the second ODI, didn't she? Which was a little bit of a mixed up 11. Like a couple of rotations and stuff. And like she opened the batting, but she didn't captain, even though she was playing, which was a bit weird. But I don't know if you saw it. They did like a graphic on the TV coverage, the Spark coverage, looking at her average from the different positions. And it basically just went like this, like starting at the top, averaging over 50 as an opener and just like steadily going down. So it's blatantly obvious, I think, as well, that like, and this isn't just us saying this on a podcast. They, like, as I say, they were talking about it, the Spark commentators and stuff, who obviously have close links to the team as well. So like, it's blatantly obvious that she is, whether it's the best thing for the balance of the team, I think it is. Sounds like you think it is too, but they've obviously been thinking about it because she has opened before and hadn't been opening recently. But it's pretty clear that Sophie Devine is herself, like the best version of herself as a batter when she's opening in ODIs. Like that's where she should be. Basically,
translate again. Great comparison with Brendan McCullum. Why are they good at opening? Because they just fucking give it a tonk with zero fucks. Like that is what you want to see. That is that is the Kiwi cricket revolution. Like just go out, have fun, attack, aggressive cricket, and enjoy yourself. None of the passive fucking bullshit. But we've got to keep it moving here, Wildcard. NRL preseason trials. Another thing I just want to touch on here. So we do have a Warriors squad. Not every squad has been announced. So I'm just kind of rolling through some of the squads that have been announced. Warriors, you've got a lot of these Garrett Smith, Jaden Corrington, Adam Cook type of jokers who are all Palangi Australians from the Redcliffe system. So
right.
That's quite interesting if you get deep into the mangroves of like the Redcliffe Warriors relationship, Redcliffe building towards an NRL team. Well, right now they're just fucking doing the mahi together, as we would expect. What I do want to say about the Warriors is that a lot of the young players have been named. So Ali Liatawa is probably the most surprising, just because he was playing first 15 for King's College last year. He was playing fullback for the Warriors SG ball team to start 2020. And he moved to Redcliffe, I imagine, at the end of the school year last year. And then he must be like making some moves with the training over in Australia, because he's the only bloke from the group that moved over at the end of last year, start of this summer. Ali Liatau is the only one now named in the NRL squad, the trial squad. So he must be making some sort of impression. So pay attention to Ali Liatawa, probably forecasting as a winger to start in whatever grade he starts in, under 21s or reserve grade for Redcliffe. Could play centre, and he is like a fullback. I think he played midfield for King's College first 15 alongside Francis Manulelua, who regular listeners, regular readers will know is someone who's been in the Warriors system and it's a crude way of saying it, and I don't like the comparison because of just the hype around it, but Francis Manulelua is the Atene Nanai Saturo right now. Signed to the Warriors, Super Rugby teams will be frothing over him. He's like a beast for King's College first 15, and he's been in like future Warriors games as well for a long time now. So long term, they do have someone like that. But shout out Ali Liatawa. Note that name down. And then you've got the crew. You've got the Kepu twins. You've got Otakulo is there. Viliami Vaile is there. and Junior Ratuva's there as well. Started with King's College first 15. He was a lock, moved to Melbourne Storm, had some injury battles. He was like part of a Canterbury NPC rugby squad. And then last year he was playing on the wing. And I think it was for, might have been Marist or Bay Roscoe, I think. It was Bay Roscoe in the Auckland Premier competition. Played a couple games there. A couple weeks later, starting on the wing for Redcliffe reserve grade. So he's he played lock in first 15 for fuck's sake. Like if you're playing lock in first 15 and then you're going to play like wing in rugby league, you're obviously an athletic unit. Let's go hard and fast throughout some of these trial squads. Raiders, you've got Peter Holler. He's moved down from the Cowboys and he's got a bench spot there. Also shout out Ata Mariota, who was a Manurewa Marlins junior, and like just his swag and size is like a mini Josh Papali'i. South Sydney Rabbitohs, big one here. Josiah Karapani. He was also in the Warriors SG Ball squad. He is named to start at centre. And last year, he was playing SG Ball, I believe, for the Rabbitohs. And now he's starting centre in a trials game. So just keep an eye on him. Josiah Karapani, very skillful, bit of a unit, and part of a brewing Rabbitohs Kiwi-NRL crew. North Queensland Cowboys, Dejan Asi, starting at halfback. That's interesting. He's from Christchurch, has played in NRL before. Griffin Niami, Greymouth product. He is starting as a middle forward. He is my Cowboy to keep the closest eye on, Griffin Niami. He's a beast. He's a monster in the middle of the field and part of an exciting Kiwis forward pack group. You do have Connolly Lemelu moving from centre to edge forward. He's from Papatoetoe Rugby. We've got Dean Mariner. Now, I use a lot of hyperbole here, wildcard, with some of these youngsters in the Kiwi-NRL ranks. Dean Mariner deserves the most hyperbole. Hyperbole, maybe.
Yeah, hyperbole. But I like hyperbole better, I think.
Hyperbole. He was fantastic in the trial last week for the Broncos, and he's named as part of their extended trial squad. Last year, he was playing schoolboy footy for Palm Beach Currumbin. And now he is on the fringes of Broncos NRL. So he's pretty fucking good. Shout out to the Marist Saints in Auckland as well, where he is from. Parramatta Eels, Hayes Perham starting at fullback. That's cool. Also have Ofahiki Ogden, Mangere East Junior. He is part of the Eels now by the looks of it. He was with the Bulldogs last year. I think he had a little off-season drama, but he has now moved to the Eels. And the Eels, fantastic Kiwi-NRL crew right now. Like Maratini Okori goes to the Warriors next season. Isaiah Papali'i goes West Tigers next season. Right now, Hayes Perham, Hayes Dunsters from Rotorua. Bailey Simonson is Kiwis eligible. Dad played for the All Blacks. Makahisi Makatoa's from New Plymouth. Neil Corey's a Mangere East Junior, so he's got the Mangere East Junior homie Ofahiki Ogden right there. I think they might have played under 20s for the Warriors together, as well as Isaiah Papali'i. Just need to take a breath there, wildcard. That is the NRL trials wrap. There are more squads to be announced, so we don't know what's going to happen there. But if they are named before I do tomorrow's email, I'll do every squad breakdown in tomorrow's email. So check that out. Next here, quickly, wildcard. What's the latest with Steven Adams and Sean Marks in the NBA? We've got Sean Marks kind of simmering after the James Harden, Ben Simmons deal. Fascinating time for just a Kiwi bloke. Like, fucking hell. Just deep in the you know what I found interesting about that whole saga, wildcard, was just the range of information, the range of like, this is going to happen, this is going to happen. It was very strange because everyone had like conflicting reports and shit like that. And the whole time I was just thinking, there's just this Kiwi dude, Sean Marks, at the center of this. Like, how fucking weird is this? Steven Adams, by all accounts, from what I've followed from you following Steven Adams, has found a lovely patch of form as well for the Memphis Grizzlies. So can you just do a quick bit on Steven Adams and Sean Marks?
Yeah, just checking my microphone's still working. Yeah, with Steven Adams, like it's the same as we would have said a week ago, except that he just happens to have also had like I think 5 games in a row, especially where he's just also been like clogging up the stat sheet. Like he's been on a really nice streak of and it's not really that he's doing anything different. Maybe there's a little bit of some, a couple matchups have been real nice for him. Ironically, one of those matchups that was real nice for him was the New Orleans Pelicans, going up against Jonas Valanciunas for the, two dudes who were traded for each other. And it's nice seeing them like have a little moment before the thing, but as they were set up to do the tip off. And then also after the game, there were a couple little moments, like as the clock was ticking down last couple of seconds, ball was, no one was going to shoot. The game was done. Killian Hayes goes over and so daps up Steve and has a few words, and then Billy Hernan-Gomez and Steven Adams had like a good old chat afterwards. And these are the two backup big men that he worked with last season, like when he was with the Pelicans. So that was kind of cool, just seeing like a real nice relationship existing there between both of them. Billy especially, like I remember him saying, actually Adams was saying that Billy Hernan-Gomez was like his best mate on the Pelicans team, so it was kind of cool seeing them have a little reunion. And he torched them. Like he outscored, I don't think he outscored Jonas Valanciunas, but he out rebounded him by a consistent margin, and like chucking like 5 assists or something like that. I think he had like 13, 14 and 5 or something in that game, and he's not even playing big minutes at the moment. Like he had a game against Charlotte where I think he can't remember what the stats were, but it was something nuts. It was like whatever. It was roughly a double with like 5 or 6 assists or something like that. Just look it up and see what I'm talking about, anyone who's listening. But the point to take the most note of when you look at the box score there, just have a look at how many minutes he played, because it was like 16 minutes or something, and he did so much work just clogging up stats. And like we know this isn't always the way it operates for him. He's not necessarily someone who cares about this kind of thing, but he is in a nice little hot streak at the moment where some of these stats are being reflected, and he's getting a lot of love and credit and stuff for this. And I actually think his coach referred to him as the glue to their offense or something like this within the last week. So beautiful yarns for them. They're on another I think 6-game winning streak as it stands. The All-Star break is coming up this weekend. I think they have one game before then. Must be Friday. I'm not sure though. Either way, they're going to hit that up on just like sizzling form as they have been going. The Sean Marks stuff. You mentioned the conflicting reports and stuff, because there's that really funny thing where like Brian Windhorst went on ESPN and said like, yeah, they're talking. It sounds like it might genuinely happen, and then Adrian Wojnarowski comes in and he's like, despite what other people have suggested, like it's not going to. I've got no information that there are ongoing talks and whatever. And he kind of embarrassed himself because it ended up happening like 24 hours later. This is like a little bit of conspiratorial thinking from myself, but I wonder if Sean Marks mightn't have had something to do with that. Like maybe Woj deliberately took an L on that one because there was like, it was in the better interest of the Brooklyn Nets to negotiate up the price. You know what I mean? Like as part of the bargaining to make it seem like they were willing to walk away from the table. And it's not about what we're hearing as fans. It's about what the Philadelphia 76ers and Daryl Morey are hearing. Oh, well, if they don't think this is a serious talk, then maybe it doesn't matter. I just wonder if Sean Marks might have just like, you scratch our back here and we'll give you some scoop on some free agents in the off season, and we'll all come out of this better in the long run. I wonder if there's some of that involved.
Which NBA insider do you think Sean Marks is like cozied up with? Do you think he's like Shams Charania? Do you think he's Woj? Do you think, because it's kind of like you're saying that he's like more Windhorst than Woj, I imagine, but like
no, I think it might be the other way around.
So he's more Woj than Windhorst.
Yeah, like in that he convinced Woj, if you go out there and say that we're not negotiating, I'll help you out with some other scoops. You know what I mean? I could see because Sean Marks has been around the league for a long time. therefore I don't think he'd be a shams guy necessarily. I mean, the thing is, I think with those guys, they get most of their information from agents as much as they do from GMs as well. So there's that factor. I'm just trying
But Marks is definitely aligned to someone. Like, it's just how the
Yeah.
business works. So you have to be, if Sean Marks has information that he wants to get out there to the NBA community, who are like fucking fizzing for just any information, like they're addicted to the dopamine. Sean Marks has to have someone, and I'm just curious, like, who do you think that is? Do you think it's like fucking one of the big dogs, or do you think he's like got his own little Brooklyn Nets beat writer, or like, because it's kind of combining worlds here, right? Like, we're combining.
Yeah.
Well, that was the whole fascination about the trade, was we're combining our, well, like, he's just the Kiwi bloke, Sean Marks, at the center of all this shit, and it's like, well, I'm curious how Kiwi bloke Sean Marks fits into, you know, the media mayhem, the insider mayhem as well.
Yeah, I could see that going either way, because I could see why he would be chummy with someone like a Windhorst, who I think it would be maybe a little more like congenial about things. Like it'd be a little like, whereas Woj, you know, is a savage. But then also he's a savage because he's the best in the business. So, and in Mark's position might just be like, I'm an establishment man, so I'm going to go with the establishment man and just get the word out there. These people are all just tools to our end game. So I don't know. I expect he's a pragmatic type. He'll work with whoever comes along as well. I don't think he's someone who would burn bridges or anything like that. I think he knows that he's in a job and he represents the organization he works for, and what is best for the organization is best for him in that way.
So in the same way that Steven Adams or Tipene, I think he said his Māori name was Tipene, so might just, you know, go with the Tipene Adams. In the same way that Tipene Adams he plays NBA basketball like just a pure Kiwi. I wonder if Sean Marks does his mahi as a pure Kiwi as well, where he's got like all these fucking people hitting him up, and he's just like, you know, whatever, bro. Like, trying to run a team here. Like, he doesn't have any insider connections. He's just like doing his thing. I wonder if that's the case. Hopefully, maybe. But either way, we'll like just if you do have like a slither of basketball fandom, how the James Harden, Ben Simmons situations play out for both teams is a fascinating idea just to keep an eye. It's just one of these sporting things, like, just let it play out and learn from it. I think it's going to be real interesting just how those two parties evolve, and obviously how Steven Adams, Memphis Grizzlies building into NBA playoffs. That's exciting. And Sean Marks and the Brooklyn Nets trying to, again, fascinating, because you got Steven Adams and the Memphis Grizzlies on the rise into the NBA playoffs. And then you got the Brooklyn Nets and Sean Marks just like, we should be in the NBA playoffs. And like, it's a bit of a kerfuffle if we're not. And like, it's a fascinating little mix and match of emotions. Let's slide into some football here, wildcard, before we finish with cricket. Let's start with the football Ferns. I think that's like something we need to highlight. The football Ferns are back playing footy with a bunch of games over the next week or so. 2 games?
3 of them. Yeah. Iceland, USA, and Czech Republic. And
as we've discussed, this is a very different group of fixtures than they usually get. You usually get a lot of Canada, USA, some of the big dogs in women's football. And now it just feels like maybe some more evenly matched contests coming up for the football Ferns. First game on Friday. And are those games coming thick and fast, or are they spread out like over a week, or?
Over about the course of 7 or 8 days or something, which is kind of in alignment. I assume this is probably deliberate as well. It's the She Believes Cup. It's a friendly tournament that America hosts, I don't know, every now and then. so it doesn't mean we have to play America, but bookended by potentially winnable games against Iceland and Czech Republic, which will give that's quite a nice way to do it, is where you get games of sort of like more your level, and then you also get a game against someone better to test yourself. It's not just 2 games against USA, lose 5-0 both times, don't really know where you're at. But yeah, 3 games over the course of like 7 or 8 days against a sort of different level of opponents as you go along, kind of synonymous with a World Cup group stage, which is really convenient and probably deliberate from the organizers as well.
What are you looking for from a team perspective with the football Ferns, and from there boil it down to like an individual level where maybe there's some great young players who have been called up to the squad, or maybe you're more interested in how some of the older players, like the world-class type of players, hold it down in the squad. And like the name that comes to mind for me just off the top here is Hannah Wilkinson.
Yep.
Considering what I've seen from her in the football Ferns, and then what she's doing now for Melbourne City, that seems to be an exciting wrinkle. But just curious about you for some key things regarding the football Ferns and their team and their squad throughout this She Believes Cup.
Yeah, so I think the starting 11 is probably fairly sorted. We've seen relative consistency in most of the areas under Jeka Klimkova so far in her first 2 tours. You do have Abby Urseg coming in for the first time, I think, under Klimkova, and also Hannah Wilkinson is in the same boat as well. So obviously, and Rebecca Stott too is another one who's like a few senior players who haven't quite had the opportunity to play yet in the new regime. So seeing how they fit in is going to be very interesting. Urseg supposedly just slides straight, like Katie Bowen has been playing centre back. Presumably this frees her up to either play in, probably play in midfield. I would guess ahead of Daisy Cleverley, but Daisy Cleverley certainly did nothing wrong in the most recent games. So couple interesting selection ideas, and maybe it does get a little funkier when you do have like more of a full, like the closest to a full strength team that Klimkova's been able to. I'd say it probably is a full strength team at this point. There might be a little bit interesting couple of selection issues. I think one is the goalkeeping scenario, and I would not be surprised whatsoever if we see each of the 3 goalkeepers in the squad just play 1 game each, just to get a good idea of where they're at. Because I think Anna Leet has probably established herself as the number 1 goalkeeper now for the Ferns. I think, especially in the way that Klimkova's team is looking to play now, a lot more build up from the back and stuff. Well, Anna Leet is almost as good of a shot stopper as Erin Naylor is, and she's much better with the ball at feet. So I think overall she's just a better fit, playing regularly as well. You want to slide in?
She's the Wellington Phoenix.
No, that's Lily Elfeld. Anna Leet plays for West Ham at the moment. So, and had a nice little run while their Australian goalkeeper Mackenzie Arnold was at the Asia Cup. So she had like 5 or 6 games stretch where she was playing every match for West Ham under Kiwi manager Ollie Harder as well. Doing the goods there, signing her. So she's also in very good form and has been playing recently at the highest level. A couple of those games were against Chelsea, who were like Champions League runners up last season and won all the domestic trophies in England, and might do it all again this season as well. They're in good form again. So, but Anna Leet's not on this tour is the point. She's backed off for just, they said, personal reasons. That could be anything, so no need to speculate. She's not available. Vic Essen, Erin Naylor, and Lily Elfeld are the 3 keepers who are traveling. So as I say, I think we'll probably see them all get 1 game each. And if that is the case, draw straws as to who's the unlucky one who has to play against America and pick the ball out of the net a couple times more often. We'll see how that goes. Orfeld or Essen might actually enjoy that thing, because Erin Naylor's played against America several times already in her career. It's not so much of a novelty. So that's one aspect to keep an eye on. And yeah, definitely the Hannah Wilkinson thing, because maybe the one position where you've seen a bit of rotation from Klimkova so far has been in that front line. Liv Chance has played on one wing. Jackie Hand's got quite a few games on the other wing, but is a player just finished up her college career, so looking for professional opportunities now. And as to like the striking realms, I think Gabby Rennie started a game or two. Ava Collins, I think, started a game. Emma Rolston, I think, started a game as well. So they've sort of been looking for the final piece of the puzzle up front, and this has coincided with Hannah Wilkinson coming into the team for first time under the new management, playing probably in the form of her life right now. Like, I think she's got 10 goals for Melbourne City already. I think she's the quickest player to reach the 10 goal mark in an A-League season yet. Had a goal and an assist in their most recent game before flying over. So just playing outstandingly well, looking super fit, and in all the ways that you might have wondered whether she could fit into a team that's going to press high and be more ball dominant, passing the ball around a lot more. Whereas Wilkinson has tended to be used because of her height and strength in particular, tended to be used as like a target woman striker. But the way she's playing for Melbourne, she's shown plenty of mobility, plenty of fitness. Like the way, like they're pressing high as well. They're trying to do similar things to what the Ferns are hoping to achieve. It's just a perfect alignment there. So I don't think there's anything to worry about there. And Hannah Wilkinson, having been in maybe like a little bit of a wobbly place just with the Ferns on account of being, the starting striker in a team that wasn't scoring enough goals or creating enough threats or whatever, everyone's place has got to be up for grabs there. She's really just like, with the way she's been playing for Melbourne City, super excited to see what she can now do in a football Ferns context and hopefully translate some of that form into the international scene, in which case the Ferns have got to that might be the final piece of the puzzle. I don't know. Like, if they get that in place, they've suddenly got quite an exciting team to build off of that win against South Korea at the last time of asking. So yeah, I don't have much faith in them being able to get a result against America, but I think Iceland and Czech Republic are two nicely ranked teams for them to really test where they're at right now and how they're building ahead of a co-hosted home World Cup next year.
We know there's a lot of depth emerging in all these sports, blokes and wahine that we cover. And we've got a Football Ferns squad, and we've got Football Ferns players in the squad that showcase that depth. New players to the Football Ferns, new players in the Flying Kiwis ranks who are performing well and command selection in the Football Ferns through their mahi with their respective clubs. To move us into the Wellington Phoenix side of things, they won their first game last weekend as predicted by yourself. And I'm curious, because we've seen the Wellington Phoenix, it's kind of a juggling act, right? Like, it's a juggling act of Wellington Phoenix winning games and competing to the best of their abilities while also being a stepping stone for young Kiwi footballers. Seen it with Sarpreet Singh, seen it with Marco Rojas, seen it with Roberto Cacace.
Roberto Carlos Cacace.
We've seen it with him as well, where they are amazing for the Wellington Phoenix and then they make a move somewhere else, which is a bit rough for the Wellington Phoenix, but maybe twisted on its head, it's a fantastic reflection of Wellington Phoenix development and systems and culture that, they're all good dudes. They're not divas. They're all well equipped to perform at higher levels elsewhere. So shout out Wellington Phoenix. But given the Football Ferns are in the spotlight here, who are the players in the Wellington Phoenix Wahine camp that have impressed you in their rather impressive start to their W League stanza careers that might fit that Sarpreet Singh, Marco Rojas and Liberato Cacace mold, where it's this player is, maybe they're not too good for the W League right now, or they're too good to be held down. It's too good for the W League's a bit rough because, as you said, Hannah Wilkinson's in great form. W League is a legit women's competition, I reckon, around the world. It's maybe not among the best, but it's a very legit competition. So maybe that's the point. The stepping stone doesn't really apply here because some of these players might just be, being a fantastic W League player is great. It's not he's a monster in the A League, but you get him over Europe, he sucks. the W League feels a bit closer to some of those international competitions. But I am curious, like, are there any players in this Wellington Phoenix Wahine squad that give you the similar feeling of Rojas or Singh or Kakache?
Yeah, I think Singh and Kakache, there's a really obvious comparison for each of them. I will say, like, I think the A-League would be stronger compared to some of the foreign leagues if it was a longer, more professional league. Like, that's an issue for it, is it's kind of been a summer league. Players play there on their off seasons from America sometimes just to get more games in. And partly because of this, you've seen a lot of the top Matildas players, and Rebecca Stott was briefly part of this wave as well, like leaving the W League, the A-League Women's, as it's now called, to go play for, in particular, Women's Super League clubs in England, which is, you know, about the most competitive league on the planet. There are clubs that can beat the English clubs, but I think England, in terms of, like, same with the Premier League, it's just in terms of, like, competitiveness across the full division, I think that's, you know, probably the benchmark at the moment. A lot of players, you know, did leave within the last sort of 3 years to chase more better professional opportunities, better competitive opportunities. But the asterisk to go with that is that like most of them have been signing for top clubs like, you know, Manchester City and Arsenal and Chelsea, like Sam Kerr scoring bucket loads of goals for Chelsea. They've gone to really good clubs and are playing really well. So obviously the best players at A-League women's level are good enough to play in the top leagues elsewhere. Like, is the A-League on overall as competitive as, no, like not even close really. But the best players, like, it's good enough to produce players good enough to go and be like really good in these other leagues. So it's a fantastic stepping stone division, and probably has embraced that a little bit more in the last couple of years as well. So I think Alyssa Wynnum and Sarpreet Singh are a nice comparison, because Sarpreet Singh broke through into the Phoenix team. He wasn't the final product, you know. He was a little bit erratic sometimes, maybe like just not physically as strong as he could have been, but had elements of his game that were clearly special, like his vision for a pass, his shooting and stuff, some of his technical stuff, but also just like the way he could get himself involved in games as well, drifting around to find the ball and then looking to make things happen, that positive aspect. Like, I see so many parallels with the way Alyssa Wynnum plays. And one of the things when I wrote about their first win was looking at some of the passing stats, and god damn, like the A-League website used to have the best, like pound for pound, the best stat analysis stuff from games in the world. And then they changed up to like this Keep Up website, and it's like absolute mind-boggling to find your way around it anymore, and you can't even find the nice, just like, show me all the players' stats from this game. I'd have to go pick club, pick player. It's so annoying, but I managed to like traverse the minefield a little bit, and I was looking at some of the passing successes, because I noticed that the Phoenix in that game, I think, had a 68% passing success rate, which was the equal best in any individual game. And the other one, the one that matched it, was a 5-0 loss against Sydney, where obviously the reason they passed so well is because Sydney let them have the ball, because they were 5-0 up at half-time in that game. They just let them have the ball for the second half, knowing they couldn't break them down. So it's kind of empty stats there. Whereas this, 68% passing success rate, when you have 51% possession as well, first time they've gone over the 50% mark, in a game you won 3-0, that's not empty stats, that's legit. But I was looking at some of the things to see, like individual players. I was looking at the front line, and Alyssa Wynnum's overall rate was like 69.5 or something, and her in the opposition half success rate was like 68 something. Everybody else in the team had a drastic drop off. Like, I think Chloe Knott went from like 75 to 55 or something, and that was the next smallest drop. So like Grace Jale was at like 22% or something, which is a bit misleading, because she is being asked to hold the ball up a lot, so she doesn't necessarily have the options to pass to. Some of those times she's a bit isolated, but still. The fact is, Alyssa Wynnum her distribution was the same, whether she was in the opposition half or not. And that's the reason why she broke into this team after being on the bench the first couple games. It's like the way she can just, outskill defenders and go past them with, step over and a nutmeg or whatever. Like that stuff gets highlights. Like that's awesome. But the reason she's held her own in the starting 11 is because of how well she links up all these other players together. Pick up the pass from her, distribute it to her when maybe that pass wasn't on from player A to player C without player B in the middle, the way she links things up and finds options, holds on to the ball. And like there's very Sarpreet Singh kind of elements about that. Even down to the fact that like, she's probably, she's quite slight. She looks like someone who might get, have to, have trouble dealing with some of the more physical defenders and stuff, as Sarpreet Singh did early on in his career, and obviously has come through that now where that's no longer a drama. Big parallels there between Singh and Wynnum. I also think there's big parallels between Liberato Kakache and Kate Taylor. Slightly different positions. Taylor's a centre back, whereas Kakache was a left back. But one thing that they both stand out in is like technically really good. Or several things they both stand out. Like technically really good, defensive instincts excellent. Like getting the right positions, making the tackles. Don't get dominated physically or anything like that. They're both very strong, very like very composed as well. Like they both look at the like Kakache. I think Ben Wayne played his 50th game last night, and they were talking about how he's like 20 years old, and I'm thinking, Libby Kakache probably got there even quicker than Ben Wayne did, though, to 50 games, because he came into the A-League and immediately looked like a 10-year veteran. Like he never had a period where you're like, this young guy is just trying to find his feet, settle in. He's like, no, he looks like he had been playing at this level for like a decade. Even down to like little veteran time-wasting tricks and things like that. He knew exactly what he was doing. He's just such a natural. And Kate Taylor has a similar vibe where like she's really composed, doesn't panic on the ball, looks to be positive, playing the ball out, and just has that. I mean, she's 18 years old, I think, and she's vice captain of the team. There's that's a pretty good indication of like the leadership qualities that she's bringing to the table and things like that. I think there's an extreme parallel between her and Kakache as well in that way too. So there's one in attack and there's one in defense. So I don't know if they've got a Rojas necessarily, but that was a while ago that Rojas was there. So I have to leave that one. Kate Taylor is injured for tonight's game though. I've gone off just after halftime in the last one. So no Taylor, no Elfeld. I think Mackenzie Barry is going to captain that team. So there we go. I also predicted they would win last week against Canberra on this same podcast. I believe I also said they'll win another game before the season's out, and I'm still confident on that too. Probably next week against Western Sydney, but tonight against Adelaide, who knows?
I just got one more question about like both, but you just threw me off because I didn't know the women were playing tonight, Thursday night.
Yeah, a bit of a weird fixture-y thing, but
generally speaking, I think there's those positive vibes with both teams, right? Wellington Phoenix, as you've written about, as you've talked about, the men have rectified their slow start as they do most seasons and got into a nice patch of form. Wellington Phoenix Wahine, they have been shown promising signs in many losses, then they grabbed a win. So there's positive energy around both teams and both camps, and they seem to have found their own kind of mini groove to some extent, I'd say. What needs to happen over the next few weeks to like kind of sustain this and maintain this? And I don't know if it feels correct to lump both Wellington Phoenix teams together, but I do believe that this can help us understand either side. Like, understand the Wellington Phoenix men, what they need to do. If it's delivered in relation to the Wahine, then it helps us understand what the men need to do, vice versa for the Wahine. So is it like, what are some of the key building blocks for either team that really need to be put in place and evident in their performances to maintain, sustain these positive vibes? Because we don't want either team to fall off a cliff right now at their respective stages of either season.
Yeah, the timing of the season is a bit strange because the women only have 3 games remaining. The men have several, a couple months left to go. So one's ramping up towards the finish line, and the other's really not even halfway through their season. So the women's team, I mean, they've stuck to the same. I've said this like so many times, but like they've stuck to the same formula the whole time. They haven't faltered. They've had a game plan. It's involved, pressing high, being dominant from set pieces, which is actually something you didn't see quite as much of against Canberra. And yet they won that game. So cool. Like there's more in the tank there, obviously. They've been like aggressive defensively. And they've, continually gotten better and better. As I was saying about like that Canberra game, first one, they had more than 50% possession in the game. Like they've gotten better and better at like playing with the ball in possession, those kind of things. And it's only, I mean, this second game after they got a draw first up, there was definitely like a bit of a hangover after that. They lost, I think, 3-0 to Sydney or something like that in the second game. And then the game after that was a 5-1 loss to Newcastle, I think. Like there was a down period, but there's also it's a bit rough to say like that month after the first draw did include playing some of the best teams in the competition. So it was, the fixture lists have gotten a bit easier for them since. So it's not purely the same, but yeah, I think, and you haven't, like, even when they were losing like 9-10 games in a row, whatever it got up to, I think it was 9. I think it was 9 games in a row. Like they still seem to come out with a belief in what they were building toward. Like they didn't falter from the plan. They stuck to it, and they had good, like, strong mentality coming into each game, not letting the fact that they'd been losing a bunch get them down and then like see that drop in their performances. They obviously have that clear goal of like they understand this is a development year. But yeah, coming off the high of that first win, that will be a factor in tonight's game and for the rest of the season. Is like, will you settle with that? Like, you had to work so hard to get that first win. Are you going to feel like that's job done because you take the foot off the gas just a little bit and you're going to get punished in this league? It's happened before to the same team. So with them, it's just a matter of like, keep on the same trajectory the rest of the way, as difficult as that can be and like as much as that takes. But there's only 3 games left. So, go out there and get another win. Like don't just settle for this one. And what we've seen from them so far is that they have that mentality. So I think we can be confident about that. With the fellas, you want to say something on that?
But just the woman, it feels like Sophie Devine opening or Sophie Devine in the middle order. Like the Wellington Phoenix woman, maybe let's get Sophie Devine up the order and have a bit of fun. Let's take the game to the opponent because we've laid those foundations on all the mahi that you stated. Now let's get out there, have a bit of fun, be aggressive, and play with intent.
Yeah, and like that's part of the plan anyway, isn't it, as well? When you're like high pressing, aggressive in defending, jumping into tackles. Like they have 3 players who played across the 2 central midfield places against Canberra, because Izzy Gomez got subbed up at halftime because she was on a yellow and had already committed a couple more fouls. So danger of a red card. On comes Hannah Jones. She was brilliant in the second half, actually, as the backup midfielder there. Actually won possession for both of the moves that led to their 2 second half goals. She also got a yellow card though, and Grace Wisdeski played there as well and got a yellow card. Like all 3 of the players that played in those 2, sort of holding midfield positions were yellow carded. Good sign of how aggressive this team is. But like high pressing, aggressive, taking the team, like being direct from set. These are all examples of that same thing of being like Sophie Devine, saying, what I'm good at is not sitting back and blocking and nerdling 1s and 2s. Like those are my backup options. My first option is let's take the game to the other team, be aggressive and try hit this damn ball for 6. Like that's a similar thing to the Phoenix being like, we're not going to sit back and try absorb pressure. We're going to come at you and try like put you under pressure in return. So, I mean, like it's all inherent in how they play. So hopefully that is what we see and they do get to have a bit of fun. I mean, they had plenty of fun against Canberra, scored at like opportune moments and just they didn't have to hold on for the last 10 minutes to get a victory, which is the kind of position that it slipped away from them in the past. Didn't have to do that because they were already 3-0 up. They had it in the bag, With the men, I would say, again, they've won 4 of their last 5 games, and the one they drew was like a late equalizer they conceded, which they probably should have closed that game out earlier, scored a second goal or a third goal like the women did against Canberra, should have put it to bed, and then no dramas. They'd have won 5 in a row. They've gone from last place to, I think they're currently 3 points off top after winning 3-0 against Brisbane last night. There's nothing that needs to change for them because they're playing excellent football at the moment. The guys who were struggling at the start are in good form now. The 2 imports of the number one thing that has changed is bringing in a solid, reliable, experienced head in the defensive line and Scott Wooden, and then Gael Sandoval as a creative, focal point attacking type player. No coincidence, the 2 of them scored the first 2 goals against Brisbane as well. That's your imports leading from the front, and then getting that level of quality. There was a point at which the commentators said something about because Brisbane had been on a decent bit of form as well, and they're saying, well, Brisbane have turned things around because they've suddenly started scoring goals, whereas with the Wellington Phoenix, they've turned things around because they've stopped conceding so many goals. And I'm thinking, well, no, it's simpler than that. It's simpler than that. They've turned things around because they've signed 2 high quality, typical of the club's excellent scouting. When was the last time they failed on a signing? It doesn't happen too often. They've got a really high success rate of bringing in good players from domestically or from overseas. They brought in 2 high quality imports who have played really well for them from the get go, and suddenly the team's way better. What do you know? They've got better players, and now they're a better team. And it's helping everything just click. Other players don't feel as much pressure, and they're able to be a little freer in doing what they do. The midfield combo's got fantastic. David Ball's got someone to play off of, and he's you're seeing peak David Ball facilitator mode. Reno Piscopo's coming into some decent. I thought he had a really good game against Brisbane as well. And Josh Soterio's had the best streak of his Phoenix career over the last 3 or 4 games. So all of this is happening around them putting better players into that lineup, giving oppositions more to worry about and freeing up some of these other guys. What do you know? They're suddenly winning heaps of games and looking really good as they've improved the team. Funny that.
I wonder what Sean Marks thinks about that idea of better players and a better team. Also, shout out to Wellington. Wellington's sporting development programs, and I just realized that because I've been big on the Wellington cricket development systems, men and women. Obviously, you've got Ole Academy and other academies in Wellington.
The Phoenix Academy.
Ole
and the Phoenix Academy, the 2 top sources of new professional players, both of them. Those 2 academies are running the show.
And you've got Wellington Phoenix, their own scouting, their own international, the world of football is fucking massive. So to have Memphis Grizzlies do a great job of scouting and drafting and developing players. That's something that has impressed me learning more about the Memphis Grizzlies. And that's a really easy advantage to have in the NBA because not many other teams are investing that much into development. They just go out and sign a big name. Wellington Phoenix, every football club thinks that they've got the best development shit, and how many fucking football clubs are there in the world? Wellington Phoenix are out there scouting players in the busiest market, and they seem to do a pretty good job from my perspective, and you're reinforcing that from a deeper in the Mangroves perspective as well. So shout out Wellington. I do like Wellington sport. I do like what various sporting parties are doing down there in Wellington. Let's finish with a bit of cricket here, Wildcard. And shout out to you. Shout out to Colin de Grandhomme because he's back in the Black Caps test team, which is a big win for yourself. It's a great moment for yourself. CDG and also Matt Henry. Big moment for Matt Henry. I wrote about Glenn Phillips this morning and had to save you on the variety show because your creativity fucking deserted you at the most important moment, and you came. I asked for a word to describe Glenn Phillips. You said busy. Bit of a letdown.
I was trying to come up with a good synonym. I just didn't have my thesaurus open at the time.
Yeah, but fucking like, surely you know creative words. Like you can, like I pulled swashbuckling out of thin air. Like I'm sure you could fucking come in with like delectable or something like that. You know, like just something cool, something a bit cooler than busy. But I respect it. I don't know if I respect it enough to because I came in and interrupted, but
It had to be done.
it was funny. So Glenn Phillips has been amazing in one game, in a weird Plunkett Shield game. And I didn't make the case that Glenn Phillips was like the best player outside the Black Caps. I just said he was the funkiest player. And I think that is genuinely like true. And all you got to do is think back to watching your first memories of Glenn Phillips batting, right? What did that involve? It involved a lot of big hitting and a lot of weird shots and a lot of energy. And then you think about Glenn Phillips, the fielder. What did that involve? A lot of energy and a lot of athletic prowess. And if you take those two visions in your mind, those two little imaginary detours in your mind, and you apply them to spin bowling, Glenn Phillips, I'm fairly certain he gives the ball a good rip. Like if you just think about what he does in the field, how he throws the ball, how he dives, how he moves, I'm fairly confident Glenn Phillips can impart a good amount of rip on a delivery, whether it's rip with the fingers or taking it way too deep, like just his like, physical momentum through the delivery, right? Like getting up and over that front leg, all those like energy systems you have to apply to get a good spin delivery out. You can't be lazy in your action. And I don't see any laziness in anything Glenn Phillips does. Like he is all power. He is all energy. He is all athleticism. That's why I believe he's the funkiest New Zealand cricketer. And maybe he's just like the way I frame this wild card is like, so if New Zealand cricket and all the cricketers, we like the Black Caps pool of cricketers, right? They are the NBA greats. So if you want to say like Kane Williamson's Michael Jordan or whatever you want, however you want to say it, Glenn Phillips is like Allen Iverson, where it's just like pure Allen Iverson's pure basketballing, entertainment, and just funk. Glenn Phillips, to me, represents that same energy, and that's why I find him such a fascinating cricketer. But the question and idea I want to present to you as we finish this podcast, the Black Caps test squad that's playing South Africa now did dip into some depth a wee bit. And having focused on Glenn Phillips, writing about him this morning, I'm curious to discuss like some of these lads who are outside the test squad right now, but are factors in New Zealand cricket. And I think a lot of it, we can draw lines between formats, but someone like Glenn Phillips is, he's scored a test 50 on debut. He averages 38 in first class cricket. He's averaged over 30 in all 6 of his first class summers. He has averaged like over 35 in his last 3, one of which was over 40, the others over 50. So Glenn Phillips is a good long form cricketer as well. Like he's just a good cricketer. So I don't want to like get into like too much like this player plays that format, this player plays that format. I'm just curious, like, are there any other cricketers that you think are in a similar spot? Well, there's a lot of cricketers who are in a similar spot to Glenn Phillips. That's why we have the pool of depth in Aotearoa cricket that we do. Who else are some of those notable names that you think about when you're thinking just as on that fringe, on that periphery of the Black Caps? Let's go specifically test squad-ish, because some people would have thought Glenn Phillips would have a chance of earning selection in this test squad. Like
I did, yeah.
Yeah, he's right there. So who are some of those other lads that you would put in the same category? For example, you could say Doug Bracewell ahead of Blair Tickner. I believe that, Matt Henry, Tim Southey, Cole Jamieson, they have a similar skill set to Doug Bracewell. So you put Blair Tickner in, he offers something different. I think that's why Tickner was selected. But I would have Doug Bracewell as someone in that category. Are there any other blokes that you want to highlight in that kind of level or tier?
Well, there are There's a couple in that sort of like, Cam Fletcher would have been someone who might mention a month ago, him or Dane Cleaver, but a bit interchangeable between the two of them. Like the two next guys up, because BJ Walling has retired and Tom Blunder was stepped up, and therefore there's like a vacant spot as the backup keeper would kind of be an obvious one. And I wonder if, like, I suspect we won't see Will Somerville in the Test team again after the results in India. It didn't exactly look dominant there. So I wonder if they were to pick a second spot. Obviously, Mitchell Santner's played a lot. Someone like, an Aditya Ashok is on his way up. But I still feel like Ish Sodhi hasn't really gotten a decent crack at Test cricket other than early on in his career when he clearly just wasn't quite ready. I don't think he's played for 5 years. The last time he played, he saved a Test match with the bat against England in Christchurch from memory, come to think of it. Someone like that, definitely Doug Bracewell is in that same one. Is like the thing those two guys have in common is they've got Test experience. They've played. It's similar to why I suspect Hamish Rutherford got called up for this series as batting cover, because he's been there before and he knows what he's doing a bit. Been there before and has gone away, spent quite a bit of time out of it, therefore won't take it for granted being back in there, but also has, continued to flourish scoring runs domestically as well. So I think there's guys like that in that tier. As to the tier below that, the thing is with the Black Caps is the guys that, like, how long did Will Young have to wait to get his Test opportunity, right? Like, we could probably name 5 or 6 like players under the age of 25 right now off the top of our heads, but it's sort of like those guys don't get picked for Test squads yet. You got to be like a Kane Williamson level superstar to be getting those. Or Ravindra was a project player as like, but these guys are exceptions, right? Most of them are waiting till they're Will Young, Daryl Mitchell, Devon Conway doesn't really count because it was more of an eligibility thing. He'd have been in 3 years earlier, but like, you sort of like the guys we could name. It's sort of like Mark Chapman maybe is another name who might be in that conversation as well. We're sort of naming people who, like, the guys of the younger thing. It's like they could be Test prospects, but it's like, give us 3 more years of this level of domestic production before you're likely to get an opportunity, because there's only 11 players get picked every time and we've got a lot of depth. So it's hard. It's really hard to break into this team. And then also the types of selections tend to be sort of safer ones, but safer in a way like, these guys have been successful as well. Will Young, Daryl Mitchell, etc. They've not just been like safe bets to come and plug a gap. It's like they've been picked at a stage of their careers where they know exactly what their game is and are able to translate that to the higher levels. So, we named quite a few players there. I also did just, I'll just chuck this out. I did just, as we're doing that, get the thesaurus out on the word busy, and I found 3 much better ones for Glenn Phillips. So, where are we? Industrious would be one, bustling, and then my special favorite of these 3 would be assiduous, because I didn't actually know what that meant until I looked that up, but it just means the same thing as those other ones. So I'm going to go with assiduous just to reverse engineer the Monday podcast. Glenn Phillips is a swashbuckling assiduous cricketer.
There's no creativity there. You just like, that's just a ridiculous word. Like, fucking,
it's a great word.
Yeah, but there's no creativity. It's like I'm smarter than you, so here's, like,
constant in application or effort, working diligently at a task, persevering, industrious, meticulous, constant, unremitting.
Yeah, but none of those words and none of that busy vibe encapsulates the energy of Phillips.
Yeah, you do. I guess you also
he's
need
got
something
some
fucking.
I said juice when I was writing about, like, he's got the juice. He's got like the fucking. No Kiwi cricketer is as explosive as Glenn Phillips. He is Brian To'o of New Zealand cricket, right? Like, no one else has the athletic oomph as Glenn Phillips, and that's why I think he's amazing. But go back to the Black Cap stuff. I definitely wasn't thinking any young players. That's the interesting thing about this idea, is it's like, okay, Black Caps need a test batter. Who are you going to select? We might both say right now Glenn Phillips. You know, that type of thing. Or, you know, New Zealand needs an opener. What's going to happen? Hamish Rutherford. Okay, that's fine. You know, like, okay, New Zealand needs a new seamer. What are we going to do? What are we going to do? Doug Bracewell's right there. You know, those type of players. And I think we've got enough of those players to be really competitive in cricket, right? Like Cameron Fletcher and Dane Cleaver are both there as backups with the wicket keeping. If you need spinners, yeah, like Mitchell Santner's right there with Ish Sodhi. You know these players can do a job in their role. If you do need a seamer, you can go Doug Bracewell. You can go Blair Tickner. You can have another look at Jacob Duffy if you really want to. Like those little bits and pieces are all there. And then you've got the wave below that, which is the younger players. Because I think about someone like Joe Carter. Joe Carter's, he went to the 2012 World Cup with Ish Sodhi and Will Young. So he's been around since that time frame, but a lot of these dudes, they don't play the same amount of cricket. So someone like Joe Carter, that type of cricketer, is like, they are a couple seasons away from really hammering, commanding selection. And then you've got even younger players who are like the wave, where they're just trying to stack up good domestic. See, is there anyone else in that Rachin Ravindra mold who you can see being outside the status quo as far as selection goes? Like, because I don't think it's any surprise the Black Caps are a pretty good test team, selecting players that have a lot of experience, that are in tune with themselves. You mentioned we haven't seen Will Somerville since he returned from India. He did score some runs. He gave it a little whack with Glenn Phillips in the Plunket Shield. Ajaz Patel's done nothing since taking 10 wickets in an innings, right? Like that's a weird thing. But is there anyone else you kind of see in that mold of? Well, I've thought of Ajaz Patel because he played fucking domestic cricket for Yonks before. Like he's like 32, 33 years old now, really enjoying the fruits of his mahi. Are there any other cricketers who you feel like could be Rachin Ravindra types, as opposed to Ajaz Patel, Daryl Mitchell, Will Young, Devon Conway types of cricketers in New Zealand?
Well, it's not. This isn't test match consideration, but like Ben Sayers did go on that Bangladesh tour with the 2020 team, and like I don't think. I mean, Finn Allen, but like Finn Allen's there on merit because he just has demolished 2020 domestic bowling for 2 seasons in a row. So, like, and probably should have gone to the World Cup if he'd done it just a little bit sooner, if the timing had been just a little bit better. But hey, there's another one next year. So, well, this later this year, isn't it? There you go. That's ridiculous, but whatever. Since when have the ICC made any sense to begin with? Like guys like that, like but I'm not really going out on a limb there to say those two guys, because as I say, they've already played international 2020 cricket. So I don't know. Have you got anyone else in mind in that category?
No.
And there we go.
I will finish with this question. What percentage of certainty do you have that Finn Allen will open the batting for the Black Caps at the T20 World Cup in Australia later this year?
Percentage of certainty that he will open, 60. Percentage of certainty that he will be in the squad, 95.
Yeah. The first number that came to mind about opening was 65%. So I think we found a same.
Daryl Mitchell was the opener in India, wasn't he? And that was a bit of they didn't even decide on that until the warm-up games before the tournament, when they were already, like a week out. So there is potentially an opening there. I expect Gupta will still be there, and it might even be his last major tournament. Who knows? but there is a spot next to him potentially because Daryl Mitchell can bat anywhere in the top 6. That's not a worry.
And Daryl Mitchell is best equipped because that was quite a unique challenge in the UAE, like tricky pitches, best bowling attacks in the world. Daryl Mitchell
spin up front as well. So
yeah, Daryl Mitchell felt best equipped. Where I think going to Australia and Finn Allen, another super smash under his belt, like I think it's set up for him to fucking either go nuts or just get rolled every innings. And we just
one way or another,
because Finn Allen's already like a really fascinating New Zealand cricketer, and by then it might be like a whole lot more fascinating. But we will wrap up this episode of the Niche Cast. Black Caps are about to start the first test against South Africa. Happy days. Love yourself. Love Aotearoa. Like, just detach from all the bullshit and just negativity, right? Like, just enjoy what we're doing here. Enjoy our existence.
Let there be light.
Let there be light. And in Aotearoa, there's a lot of light. There's a lot of love, and there's a lot of positive energy. There's a lot of mana permeating from the land, from the sky. Papatua Nuku, Ranganui. Big it up yourself. Big it up Aotearoa, and big it up to sport, because holy fuck, it's pretty cool. Stay beautiful. Kia kaha. Chirp, chirp.